a cold steel bench, the sterile, unforgiving scent of disinfectant. For Jalen Kane, this was the end of a night that began with charcoal sketches and dreams of art school, handcuffed and processed like a common criminal. His pleas of innocence were met with mocking laughter. The officers saw a black teenager in a worn-out car and built their own narrative of guilt. They did not know the boy in their holding cell, the one they had targeted and tormented, was about to make a single phone call that would detonate their careers, their department, and their entire world. They locked him up, believing they were untouchable. They were wrong. The night was cool and quiet, the kind of stillness that settles over the suburbs long after the last commuter train is pulled away. Jalen Kane drove his mother's 10-year-old sedan, the engine humming a familiar, comforting tune. The passenger seat was littered with art supplies, sticks of willow charcoal, a portfolio of sketches, and a brand new set of oil paints he had saved up for. He was heading home from a late-night session at a friend's makeshift studio, his mind buzzing with color theory and composition, not the looming threat of authority. He was humming along to a song on the radio, thinking about the texture of the canvas he had stretched earlier, when the world behind him exploded in a silent kaleidoscope of red and blue. His heart hammered against his ribs, a sudden primal fear that every black man is taught to feel before he even learns to drive. He checked his speedometer, exactly the speed limit. He signaled, pulled over to the curb smoothly, and placed his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, just as his father had drilled into him 100 times. 2 officers emerged from the patrol car, their silhouettes stark against the blinding headlights. The older one, a man with a thick neck and a swagger that spoke of unshakable confidence, approached the driver's side. His name tag read Harlan. The younger officer, Brooks, hung back by the passenger door, his hand resting near his sidearm, his eyes scanning the interior of the car with a nervous energy. "Evening," Officer Harlan said, his voice laced with a bored sort of condescension. He leaned down, peering into the car. "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, officer, I do not," Jalen replied, keeping his voice even and respectful. "Your left tail light is out," Harlan stated flatly. Jalen knew for a fact it was not. He and his dad had checked all the lights just last weekend, but he also knew this was not the time to argue. "I'm sorry to hear that, officer. I was not aware," Jalen said. License, registration, and proof of insurance, and keep your hands where I can see them," Harlan ordered, his flashlight beam dancing across Jalen's face, then into the car, lingering on the art supplies. Jalen moved slowly, deliberately. He retrieved the documents from the glove compartment and handed them over. Harlan snatched them, his eyes barely glancing at the name before returning his focus to the car's interior. "What is all this junk?" Harlan asked, pointing the flashlight at the portfolio. "They are my art supplies, sir. I am coming from a friend's house." "Art supplies?" Harlan scoffed, sharing a smirk with Brooks. "Right. What is your real business out here tonight, son?" The word son was a barb, not an endearment. "I am a student. I was just heading home," Jalen insisted, the frustration starting to bubble beneath his calm exterior. "We will see about that," Harlan said. He handed the documents to Brooks. "Run his name." Then he turned back to Jalen. "Step out of the car, please." Jalen's blood ran cold. "Officer, am I being detained? What for?" "For a broken taillight and for me telling you to." "Now get out of the vehicle slowly," Jalen complied, his body rigid with a mixture of fear and indignation. As soon as he was standing, Harlan roughly pushed him against the side of the car. "Spread them! You have no reason to do this," Jalen said, his voice shaking slightly. "I will be the judge of that," Harlan grunted, patting him down with unnecessary force. He found nothing but a wallet and a phone. While Harlan was searching him, Brooks began rummaging through the passenger seat. "Hey, Vance, look at this," Brooks called out. He held up a palette knife, its metal edge glinting in the strobing lights. "Could be a weapon." Harlan's eyes lit up with a sick sense of victory. Well, looks like our little artist came prepared for more than just painting." "That is a palette knife. It is for mixing paint," Jalen exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." "I am dead serious," Harlan snarled, yanking Jalen's arms behind his back. "You are carrying a concealed weapon, and you fit the description of a suspect in a string of break-ins in this area." It was a lie, a complete fabrication, and they both knew it. There was no description. There was only Jalen, a black teenager in the wrong place at the wrong time in front of the wrong cop. "This is insane," Jalen pleaded, looking at Brooks, hoping for a shred of reason. "Tell him you know what that is." Brooks looked away, his face unreadable. He remained silent. The cold, sharp click of the handcuffs locking around Jalen's wrists was a sound of finality. It was the sound of his identity being stripped away, replaced by a profile, a statistic. Harlan shoved him toward the back of the patrol car. "You have the right to remain silent," Harlan began, the words a hollow mockery of justice. As the car door slammed shut, trapping him in the cramped plastic-molded seat, Jalen looked out at his mother's car, its perfectly functional taillight glowing a defiant red in the darkness. In that moment, he was not the governor's son. He was not an artist or a student. He was just another black body in the system, swallowed by the glare of red and blue. The precinct was a monument to bureaucratic indifference. The air hung thick with the smells of stale coffee, cheap disinfectant, and a faint, underlying metallic tang of fear. Officer Harlan paraded Jalen through the main bullpen as if he were a prize catch, his hand clamped firmly on Jalen's shoulder. The few officers still on duty barely looked up from their paperwork, their faces etched with the weary cynicism of the night shift. "Got another one," Harlan announced to the desk sergeant, a portly gray-haired man named Reyes. "Caught him prowling, armed with this." He dropped the palette knife into the plastic evidence bag with a theatrical flourish. Sergeant Reyes peered at the knife, then at Jalen, his gaze dismissive. "An artist, huh? What was he going to do? Paint a masterpiece on the side of a house he was robbing?" He chuckled a dry, humorless laugh. "Something like that," Harlan said, shoving Jalen toward the booking desk. "Let us get him processed." The next hour was a blur of calculated humiliation. Jalen was ordered to remove his shoes and his belt. His pockets were emptied, their meager contents, a tube of chapstick, a few dollars, and a key to his house, cataloged and sealed away. He was fingerprinted, the cold, sticky ink coating his fingers, staining the very skin he used to create. The camera for the mugshot flashed, capturing not a person but a suspect. Head forward, then profile. His expression a mixture of disbelief and simmering rage. Through it all, Jalen tried to maintain his composure. "You have the wrong person," he said to Sergeant Reyes, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "My name is Jalen Kane. My father is—" Reyes cut him off with a wave of his hand. Yeah. I have heard it all before, kid. My father is a lawyer, my uncle is a judge. Save it. You get one phone call after you're in the cell." They led him down a short, echoing hallway to the holding cells. The clang of the heavy metal door shutting behind him was deafening. A sound of absolute finality. The cell was tiny, cold, and smelled faintly of vomit and despair. A single metal bench was bolted to the wall. He sat down, the cold seeping through his jeans, and put his head in his hands. Back in the patrol car, Officer Brooks drove in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with the palette knife now sitting in evidence. Harlan, on the other hand, was buzzing, high on the adrenaline of the arrest. "See how easy that was?" Harlan said, tapping a rhythm on the dashboard. "Textbook. Kid was lippy, had a weapon. Matched the bolo we got last week." "There was no bolo, Vance," Brooks said quietly, his eyes fixed on the road. "And you know that was a painting tool." Details, Harlan scoffed. "It is a blade, is it not?" "He is a punk. Looked suspicious the second I saw him. My gut is never wrong. We put a good arrest on the books tonight. The lieutenant will be pleased." Brooks did not respond. He felt a knot tightening in his stomach. He had seen Harlan do this before, escalate a minor stop, invent a pretext, and bully his way to an arrest. Brooks was only 2 years on the force, and Harlan was his training officer, a respected veteran. Questioning him meant trouble. It meant being labeled soft, meant risking his own career. So he stayed quiet just as he had on the side of the road. But the image of Jalen's face, the genuine shock and betrayal in his eyes, was seared into his mind. This felt different. This felt wrong. In his cell, Jalen was finally given his phone call. The guard led him to a grimy phone bolted to the wall. He dialed his father's personal number, his heart pounding with a desperate hope. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. "You have reached Dominic Kane. Please leave a message." Jalen's throat tightened. His father was likely in a late-night budget meeting. His phone silenced. "Dad," Jalen began, his voice cracking. "Dad, it is me. I have been arrested. I am at the Northwood precinct. Some cop named Harlan. He said my taillight was out, but it was not. He found my palette knife and called it a weapon. Dad, I did not do anything. Please, please call me back. I do not know what to do." He hung up the phone, the feeling of hopelessness washing over him like an icy wave. The guard led him back to the cell, the metal door groaning shut once more. He was alone, trapped inside the cold, impersonal machinery of a system that had already decided who he was. And the one person who could help him had no idea he was even there. Governor Dominic Kane rubbed his temples, the fluorescent lights of the conference room a dull ache behind his eyes. The state budget meeting had dragged on for hours, a grueling marathon of fiscal projections and political compromises. Finally, it was over. He walked wearily back to his private office in the Capitol building, loosening his tie. All he wanted was to go home, pour a small glass of whiskey, and forget about state deficits until morning. He sank into his leather chair and picked up his phone, wincing at the string of missed notifications. Most were from his chief of staff and various department heads, but one stood out. A missed call and a voicemail from Jalen. A small smile touched his lips. He imagined Jalen was calling to complain about his mom's car or to ask for money for more art supplies. He pressed play on the voicemail, leaning back in his chair. The sound of his son's voice, strained and cracking with fear, shot him upright. "Dad, I have been arrested. Northwood Precinct, Harlan, palette knife, a weapon. I did not do anything." The world around Governor Dominic Kane went silent. The budget, the state, the late hour, it all vanished. The governor disappeared, and in his place was only a father, his heart seized by a cold, terrifying dread. He played the message again, listening to every tremble, every desperate word. Northwood. That was a quiet, affluent suburb. What in God's name was going on? His mind raced, piecing it together. Jalen, driving his mother's unassuming car, profiled and pulled over. An ambitious or prejudiced cop escalating the situation. It was a story he had heard 1,000 times, a reality he had fought against his entire political career. He had always tried to shield his son from the harsh realities that came with being a young black man in America. But the world had found him anyway. A wave of pure, unadulterated fury washed over him, so intense it made his hands shake, but he suppressed it, channeling it into a cold, hard resolve. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. Action was required. He did not call his security detail or his attorney first. His first call was to the superintendent of the state police, a man he knew well. "Colonel Jennings, this is Governor Kane. I apologize for the late hour." "Governor, no apology necessary. What can I do for you?" Jennings's voice was instantly alert. "I need you to get me the personal cell number for Chief Dale Brody of the Northwood Police Department immediately." There was a brief pause. "Is everything all right, sir?" "No, Colonel, it is not. My son has been arrested and is being held at the Northwood Precinct. I want Chief Brody's number, and I want you to have a state trooper meet me there. Unmarked car, no sirens. Right away, Governor." Within a minute, his phone buzzed with a text message containing the number. He dialed it without hesitation. It was answered on the second ring by a groggy voice. "Brody? Chief Brody, this is Governor Dominic Kane." The fogginess in the chief's voice evaporated instantly. "Governor, to what do I owe the honor? Is everything okay?" "No, Chief, it is not," Dominic said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I just received a voicemail from my son, Jalen Kane. He tells me he is currently a guest in one of your holding cells, arrested by an officer, Harlan. Perhaps you can explain to me why my son, an art student with no criminal record, was arrested tonight for carrying a palette knife." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Dominic could practically hear the gears turning in Brody's head. The frantic search for information, the dawning horror. "Governor, I had no idea," Brody stammered. "I am not at the precinct. I have not been briefed on the night's arrests." "Then I suggest you get briefed, Chief. And I suggest you do it quickly." Dominic's voice was like ice. "I am on my way to your station right now. I expect my son to be waiting for me in your office, unharmed, and I expect a full and complete explanation for this incident. Am I making myself clear?" "Crystal clear, Governor. I am on my way now. I will handle it personally," Brody assured him, his voice now tight with panic. Dominic Kane hung up the phone without another word. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out of his office. The political mask was gone. The calm, measured negotiator had been replaced by something far more formidable. A father whose child was in trouble. The Northwood Police Department had just arrested a boy. They were about to face the man who ran the state. The Northwood precinct remained an island of mundane activity, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Officer Vance Harlan was at his desk, typing up his incident report with a self-satisfied smirk. He embellished with practiced ease, turning a simple traffic stop into a proactive measure against potential crime. He described Jalen's confusion as evasiveness and his pleas of innocence as belligerence. The palette knife was logged as a modified blade concealed within the vehicle. It was a work of fiction designed to justify his actions, a fortress of words to protect him from any scrutiny. His partner Tanner Brooks sat at the adjacent desk, staring at a blank screen. He had not written a single word of his own supplementary report. The unease in his gut had grown into a nauseating dread. Every word Harlan typed felt like another brick being laid in a wall of lies, and Brooks knew he was being cemented inside it with him. "You should get that report done," Harlan said without looking up from his screen. "The sooner it is filed, the sooner we can forget about this punk." "I am just thinking," Brooks mumbled. "Do not think too hard," Harlan advised. "It was a good bust. End of story." At the front desk, Sergeant Reyes was halfway through a crossword puzzle when the phone rang. It was the chief's administrative line, which was unusual at this hour. He answered with a gruff, "Reyes." The voice on the other end was frantic. "Sergeant, this is dispatch. The chief is en route to the station, ETA 5 minutes. He is asking for the arrest report for a Jalen Kane." Reyes frowned, the name ringing a vague bell. Kane? Kane? Oh, the artist kid Harlan brought in an hour ago. "What does the chief want with that for?" "I do not know, but he sounds agitated," the dispatcher said. "He wants the arresting officers, Harlan and Brooks, to meet him in his office the second he arrives." Reyes hung up, bewildered. He lumbered over to Harlan's desk. "Hey, Harlan, the chief is on his way in. He wants to see you and Brooks about your arrest tonight, the Kane kid." Harlan looked up from his report, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "What? The kid's mommy called to complain? It is 1 a.m. What is so damn important?" "Beats me," Reyes grunted, turning to walk back to his desk. But he did not sound happy. A seed of unease was planted in Harlan's mind, but he quickly dismissed it. The chief was a stickler for procedure. He probably just wanted to cross his T's and dot his I's. Then the main precinct line rang. Reyes answered it, his voice already dripping with irritation. After a moment, his eyes went wide. He held the phone away from his ear, staring at it, as if it were a venomous snake. "Who was it?" Brooks asked, noticing the sudden change in the sergeant's demeanor. Reyes swallowed hard, his face pale. That was Colonel Jennings' office from the state police." Now Harlan was paying attention. He stood up. The state police? What about? They wanted to confirm that a minor by the name of Jalen Kane was in our custody, Reyes said, his voice barely a whisper. And they informed me that Governor Dominic Kane is personally en route to this precinct. The name hit the room like a physical blow. Governor Dominic Kane. Harlan stared at Reyes, his mind refusing to connect the dots. Kane? No. No way. The kid in the cell. Brooks felt the blood drain from his face. The name on the registration, he had not even processed it, just typed it into the system. Leonora Kane, the mother. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. He looked at Harlan, whose cocky bravado had completely vanished, replaced by a ghastly, ashen terror. "Vance," Brooks whispered, his voice trembling. "His dad." The sound of tires screeching to a halt in the parking lot cut through the sudden, deathly silence of the bullpen. A car door slammed. Heavy, furious footsteps echoed on the pavement outside. Sergeant Reyes looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Harlan stood frozen, his half-finished, falsified report glowing on the screen in front of him, a digital monument to the single worst decision of his life. The ticking bomb had just gone off. Chief Dale Brody burst through the doors, his face a thunderous mask of fury and panic. His eyes scanned the room, landing on the 3 shell-shocked officers. "Where is he?" Brody roared, his voice shaking the windows. "Where is the governor's son?" Chief Brody's presence filled the precinct with an immediate suffocating pressure. He was a man who was usually calm and collected, a politician in a police uniform. To see him this way, his face flushed with rage, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity, sent a shockwave through the room. He did not wait for an answer to his own question. He stormed past the booking desk, his gaze fixed on the hallway leading to the holding cells. "Get him out of there now!" he bellowed over his shoulder at a stunned Sergeant Reyes. Reyes fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely fit the correct one into the lock. He hurried down the hallway with Brody right on his heels. Harlan and Brooks stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of their blunder. The sound of the cell door being unlocked echoed back into the bullpen. Jalen, who had been sitting with his head in his hands, looked up, startled. He saw the portly desk sergeant, and behind him a man in a suit whose face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "Jalen Kane?" Chief Brody asked, his voice suddenly softer, though still strained. "I am Chief Brody. There has been a terrible mistake. Please come with me." Jalen stood up slowly, his mind reeling. He was escorted out of the cell and back into the main room where he saw them. Officer Harlan and Officer Brooks, standing like statues, their faces pale and slick with sweat. Harlan's eyes met his for a fraction of a second, and in them Jalen did not see arrogance or authority. He saw pure, unadulterated fear. "Get this young man his property. Get him a drink of water. Get him anything he needs," Brody ordered Reyes, his voice regaining its sharp edge as he turned his attention to the 2 officers who had caused the catastrophe. He strode toward them, his steps slow and deliberate, each one landing like a hammer blow. He stopped directly in front of Harlan. "My office, both of you. 5 minutes," he said through clenched teeth. He then turned to Jalen. "Young man, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am. We are going to sort this out. Your father is on his way." The mention of his father sent another jolt through Jalen. It was real. His dad was coming. The cavalry was actually on its way. As Reyes returned his wallet, keys, and phone, Jalen was led to the chief's office. It was a spacious room filled with plaques and commendations that now seemed like relics from another era. He sat in a plush visitor's chair, the soft leather a stark contrast to the cold metal bench of the cell. A few minutes later, Harlan and Brooks entered, their movements stiff and robotic. They stood before the chief's desk like schoolboys awaiting punishment. Brody sat behind his desk, his hands steepled, his expression grim. "I just got off the phone with the governor," Brody began, his voice deceptively calm. "He was, shall we say, displeased. He told me his son was arrested for carrying a palette knife." "Officer Harlan, that was your arrest," Please enlighten me." Harlan swallowed hard. "Chief, with all due respect, the suspect was uncooperative. He was in an area with recent break-ins, and he was carrying what could be construed as a weapon." "A palette knife?" Brady interrupted, his voice rising. "Are you telling me that you, a 15-year veteran, cannot tell the difference between a weapon and an art tool? Did you find anything else on him? Anything illegal at all?" "No, sir, but nothing." Brody slammed his hand on the desk, making all three men jump. "You arrested a kid with no record for no reason, based on a lie about a broken tail light. Do not think I will not check the dash cam footage. And you trumped up a charge because you did not like the look of him. Is that about the size of it?" Brooks stared at the floor, his silence a confession. Harlan, however, tried one last time to salvage his story. "Sir, my report details the probable cause." "Your report?" Brody laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Your report is toilet paper. Your career, Officer Harlan, is hanging by a single frayed thread. And you," he said, turning his glare on Brooks, "you stood by and let it happen. You co-signed this disaster." Before either officer could respond, the door to the office opened. A state trooper in a sharp uniform stood in the doorway, his expression stoic. He stepped aside and Governor Dominic Kane walked into the room. The air crackled with a new and terrifying energy. The governor's eyes immediately found his son. He rushed to Jalen's side, pulling him into a fierce hug, a father's embrace that was both protective and profoundly relieved. "Are you okay, son? Did they hurt you?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. "I am okay, Dad. Just shaken up," Jalen replied, his own voice thick with emotion. After a long moment, the governor released his son. He straightened his suit jacket, and when he turned to face Chief Brody and the two officers, his expression was no longer that of a concerned father. It was the face of a man who held the power of the entire state in his hands. And that power was now focused like a laser on them. The weight of what they had done in all its horrific career-ending glory finally crashed down upon Vance Harlan and Tanner Brooks. They were not just in trouble, they were ruined. The silence in Chief Brody's office was absolute, broken only by the hum of a computer monitor. Governor Kane stood beside his son, one hand resting protectively on Jalen's shoulder. His gaze swept over the two officers, Harlan and Brooks, and lingered there. It was not a look of explosive rage, but something far more chilling, a calm, methodical dissection. He was sizing them up, not as a politician, but as a predator assesses a threat. "Chief Brody," the governor began, his voice a low, resonant baritone that commanded immediate attention, "I believe I am owed an explanation, but first, I want to see the report. The one Officer Harlan was so diligently fabricating." The word fabricating hung in the air like poison. Chief Brody slid a freshly printed copy of Harlan's report across his desk. The governor picked it up, his eyes scanning the first few lines. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He read aloud, his voice dripping with icy contempt. "Upon observing a vehicle with a non-functioning tail light, I initiated a standard traffic stop. The driver, later identified as Jalen Kane, displayed unusual nervousness and provided evasive answers to routine questions." He lowered the paper and looked directly at Harlan. "Officer Harlan, my son's tail light is fully functional. I know this because I helped him replace the bulb myself 2 weeks ago. I have also seen your department's dash cam policy. I trust the footage from your vehicle will corroborate your statement." Harlan's face, already pale, turned a shade of gray. He knew, and everyone in the room knew, that the dash cam would show a perfectly working light. His foundation, the very pretext for the stop, was a lie. I may have been mistaken about the light, Governor," Harlan stammered, but his demeanor was suspicious. "Suspicious?" the governor countered, taking a step forward. "My son has been taught since he was young how to behave when stopped by the police. He knows to be respectful, to keep his hands visible, to answer questions clearly, a behavior you might interpret as nervousness. I would interpret as the terror of a young black man who knows that a routine stop can become a death sentence. A terror, it seems, that was entirely justified tonight. He turned his piercing gaze on Brooks. "Officer Brooks, you were there. Did you witness this suspicious demeanor?" Brooks looked up, his eyes wide with panic. He glanced at Harlan, then at the governor. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The truth was a boulder in his throat. The governor did not wait for an answer. He turned the page of the report. "Let us move on." A search of the vehicle's interior revealed a concealed, modified blade approximately 6 inches in length, a palette knife. He let the words hang in the air. "You arrested my son for being an artist." "It could be used as a weapon," Harlan blurted out, a desperate edge to his voice. "A fork could be used as a weapon, officer," the governor shot back. "A pen, a set of keys. You did not arrest him because he had a dangerous tool. You arrested him because he was a black kid in a neighborhood you felt he did not belong in. You saw him and you decided he was guilty. You built this entire tower of lies to justify a decision you made in a split second of pure, unadulterated prejudice." He tossed the report onto Brody's desk. It landed with a soft, damning thud. "This is not about my son being the governor's son," he continued, his voice dropping again to that dangerous quiet level. "If he were anyone else's son, he would be sitting in that cell right now. He might have been coerced into a plea bargain tomorrow. His life could have been irrevocably damaged by your gut feeling. This stops tonight." He turned to Chief Brody. "Chief, I want both of these officers suspended, effective immediately. Their firearms and badges are to be surrendered before I leave this building. I expect a full, transparent, and exhaustive internal affairs investigation, and I want the state's attorney general to oversee it personally to ensure there is no departmental bias." "Yes, Governor," Brody said, his voice grim. "And let me be perfectly clear," the governor added, his eyes locking onto Harlan's one last time. "If this investigation finds that you falsified a police report, I will ensure you are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Your career in law enforcement is over. The only question now is whether you will end it with a pension or with a prison sentence." The finality of his words was absolute. There was no room for argument, no space for appeal. It was a declaration of war on their actions delivered with the cold precision of a surgeon. Governor Kane put his arm around Jalen. "Come on, son. Let us go home." As they walked out of the office, Jalen glanced back. He saw Chief Brody taking the badges from 2 men who looked utterly broken. In that moment, he felt a sliver of pity, but it was quickly eclipsed by a profound sense of relief. The cold fury of his father had done more than just rescue him. It had started a fire that promised to burn away the corruption that had put him in that cell in the first place. The day after Jalen's release, the Northwood Police Department became a fortress under siege, not from the outside, but from within. Governor Kane was true to his word. By morning, 2 senior investigators from the Attorney General's office, led by a sharp, no-nonsense detective named Ann Holloway, had arrived. They requisitioned Chief Brody's conference room, turning it into a command center for the investigation. Their mandate was clear and absolute. Find the truth, no matter where it led. Detective Holloway began with the evidence. The first thing she reviewed was the dashcam footage from Harlan and Brooks' patrol car. The video was damningly clear. As the cruiser pulled up behind Jalen's sedan, both taillights were visibly illuminated, glowing a steady, healthy red against the dark asphalt. The audio captured Harlan's initial comment to Brooks. "Look at this guy. Does not belong here. Let us see what he is up to." It was the smoking gun, the proof that the entire stop was pretextual, born from bias before a single word had been exchanged. Holloway's next step was to interview Harlan and Brooks separately. Harlan arrived with a police union representative, a belligerent man who immediately tried to control the interview. Holloway was unfazed. She calmly laid a transcript of the dashcam audio on the table in front of them. "Officer Harlan," she began, her tone neutral, "your report states the reason for the stop was a non-functioning tail light. This audio taken seconds before you activated your lights suggests a different motivation. Would you care to explain the discrepancy?" Harlan and his representative stared at the paper, their faces turning pale. The union rep began to bluster about context, and the pressures of the job, but Holloway cut him off. "This is not about pressure. This is about perjury," she stated coldly. "Falsifying an official report is a felony. Before we continue, I want to make it clear that you are being investigated not just for procedural violations, but for criminal conduct." Harlan's carefully constructed wall of denial crumbled. He stammered, contradicted himself, and tried to paint Jalen as hostile and threatening, but his lies were transparent against the stark reality of the video and audio evidence. He left the interview looking like a man who had seen a ghost. Brooks's interview was a different story. He arrived alone, looking as though he had not slept in days. The guilt was etched on his face. When Holloway presented him with the same evidence, he did not try to fight. He broke. "He does this," Brooks confessed, his voice trembling. "Vance. He calls it proactive policing. He sees someone he thinks is out of place, and he finds a reason, a tail light, a California stop, anything. He has a gut feeling, and he makes the evidence fit." For the next 2 hours, Brooks recounted not just the events of the previous night, but other similar incidents he had witnessed. He explained how he, as a junior officer, felt powerless to challenge a decorated veteran and his training officer. He admitted he knew the palette knife was harmless, and that he remained silent out of fear for his career. "I knew it was wrong," he said, his voice thick with shame. When Jalen looked at me, I knew, but I did not do anything. I'm just as guilty." While the interviews were underway, the story inevitably leaked to the press. A source within the Attorney General's office, or perhaps a disgruntled officer in the Northwood PD, tipped off a local news channel. By noon, the headline was everywhere. "Governor's son wrongfully arrested, officer suspended." The precinct was surrounded by news vans, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky like accusing fingers. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for the department's reputation. Chief Brody was forced to hold a press conference where he was hammered with questions he could not fully answer. He looked haggard and defeated, announcing the ongoing state investigation and promising full cooperation and transparency. Meanwhile, the Kane family was weathering their own storm. They were bombarded with calls from friends, political allies, and opponents. Governor Dominic Kane shielded his family as best he could, issuing a single powerful statement. "This incident has shed a harsh light on the reality that many in our communities face daily. This is not about my son's identity, it is about the abuse of power. I will be using my authority not just to seek justice for Jalen, but to ensure that what happened to him happens to no one else in this state, regardless of who their father is." Jalen found himself an unwilling symbol. His face was on every screen, but instead of hiding, he turned to his art. He locked himself in his room, not with charcoal and paint, but with a new, furious energy. He began to sketch the flashing lights, the cold steel of the handcuffs, the mocking face of Officer Harlan, and the despair of the holding cell. It was his way of processing the trauma, of turning his fear and anger into something tangible, something that could speak when words failed. The investigation was exposing the lies, but his art would tell the truth. The investigation, led by Detective Holloway, concluded with a report that was as meticulous as it was damning. It was a systematic deconstruction of Officer Vance Harlan's career, revealing a clear pattern of biased policing and falsified reports, particularly in stops involving minorities. Tanner Brooks's testimony, corroborated by the dash cam evidence, and a review of past complaints that had been previously dismissed, painted an undeniable picture of corruption and abuse of power. The Attorney General, armed with the report, acted swiftly. Officer Vance Harlan was fired from the Northwood Police Department, his 15-year career ending in disgrace. But it did not stop there. He was formally charged with multiple crimes, perjury, falsifying a government record, and a federal charge for the violation of Jalen Kane's civil rights. The good bust he had bragged about had become the nail in his coffin. Tanner Brooks, due to his full cooperation, faced a different fate. He was also terminated from the force, but the Attorney General declined to press criminal charges against him. In a public statement, the Attorney General noted that while Brooks's inaction was a serious ethical failure, his testimony was crucial in securing the case against Harlan and exposing a deeper problem. Brooks left the state, his dream of a career in law enforcement shattered, a walking cautionary tale of the cost of complicity. Chief Dale Brodie, facing immense public and political pressure, tendered his resignation. While the investigation found no evidence that he was aware of Harlan's specific actions, he took responsibility for the culture in his department that allowed such behavior to fester. The karma for Harlan was stark and public. His trial was a media sensation. The dash cam footage was played for the jury, and Brooks was called as the prosecution's star witness. Harlan's attempts to portray himself as a dedicated officer making tough calls fell apart under cross-examination. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The image of the once arrogant officer being led away in handcuffs was broadcast across the nation, a powerful symbol of accountability. In the wake of the scandal, Governor Dominic Kane channeled his paternal fury into political action. He used the immense political capital gained from the incident to introduce a sweeping police reform bill, which he named the Jalen Kane Accountability Act. The bill mandated automatic review of all use of force incidents by an independent body, strengthened penalties for falsifying reports, and funded de-escalation and implicit bias training for every officer in the state. After a fierce debate, the bill passed, becoming a landmark piece of legislation. Jalen, once a private art student, stepped into his new role as a reluctant public figure with quiet grace. His first gallery show, held months after his arrest, was titled Red and Blue. It featured a series of powerful raw charcoal drawings and oil paintings depicting his experience. The centerpiece was a haunting portrait of a young man's face, half illuminated by red light, the other by blue, his eyes reflecting the cold bars of a cell. The show was a critical and commercial success, and Jalen pledged a portion of the proceeds to a fund for the legal defense of those wrongfully accused. He had been targeted for his race, judged by a man who saw a threat instead of a person. They had locked him up, believing he was just another statistic, but they had misjudged him and they had profoundly underestimated his father. The scales of justice, once tipped so heavily by prejudice and power, had been brought crashing back down, a hard karmic lesson for all who had witnessed it. Jalen Kane was free, not just from the holding cell, but from the shadow of that night, having transformed his trauma into a testament for change. What began with a lie about a broken taillight ended with the complete dismantling of a corrupt officer's career and the dawn of a new era of police accountability. Jalen Kane's story is a stark reminder that injustice thrives in the dark, but it withers under the bright light of truth. Officer Harlan believed his badge gave him absolute power, but he learned that true power lies in integrity and that karma has a way of finding those who abuse their authority. This was not just about the governor's son. It was about every citizen's right to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. If this story of justice and the powerful consequences of prejudice resonated with you, please help us share it by hitting the like button. Subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you will not miss our next story. And share this video with others, because every share helps spread the message that no one is above the law. Thank you for listening.